his statement. He made the statement on 24b right after the Mishnah. Any wall, any mechitza, any wall that cannot withstand the wind is not a wall. And Rashi explains that means if the wall has movement, the wall moves back and forth. Now, Rashi obviously doesn't. Now, Rashi, why did Rashi just say any wall that can't withstand a regular wind, which means that the wind knocks down the wall? Why doesn't Rashi say that? That's what the Mishnah is. That's what the Rabbi Acha is referring to. A wall that cannot withstand the wind means that the wind comes, the wind will knock down the wall, and therefore, even if the wall is standing, since the wind will come, will knock down the wall. Therefore, that's the chidush that it's not considered a wall. So I would say that Rashi understands that that's obvious. If you create a wall and a wind comes and can knock down the wall, everybody will say that's not called a wall. The novelty is that even if the wall stands, but the fact that there's movement in the wall, that makes it not a wall anymore. That's how maybe Rashi understands the Gemara that way. The Gemara challenged the rabbi, and the Gemara, and also maybe Rashi understands it for the way the Gemara asked the question. The Gemara challenged him by saying, if you make a sukkah between the trees, and if you use the trees as your walls, the Mishnah says it's kosher. So the Gemara says, but it's coming and going. So it's obvious the tree is not falling down. The tree that's being used as a wall is not falling down, and yet the Gemara challenges him by saying, but it's moving. So we see clearly that the Gemara's issue, the rabbi's concern is the moving of the wall, even though the wall is not falling down. The rabbi is saying that the wall is still not a good wall. Sturdy. Has to be a sturdy wall. That seems the way Rashi's learning the Gemara. And therefore the Gemara says we're talking about a tree that's thick, that's old, that's strong, that's not moving around. Then the Gemara says, what about the branches? So the Gemara says the branches also we're talking about branches that are tied down. And therefore, since good morning, Mr. Bitesh, I'm happy that you're here. Since the branches are tied down, therefore it is kosher. And the Gemara said, what's the chidush? What's the novelty? The Gemara says the novelty is that you might have thought that we should be concerned that if you're going to have a sukkah, that the walls are a tree, maybe you're going to come to put some stuff on the walls of the tree. They'd come to use it on Yom Tov and Shabbat. Therefore, say we're not worried about that concern. That's the chidush. Okay. Good morning, Jaime.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
We are on 24b3. Now we're turning the page. 24b3. Tashma. Come in here. The Gemara again here is challenging Rav Acha bar Yaakov's statement. He made a statement. He's a later rabbi. He makes a statement that says that if you have a wall, a mechitza, partition that's being used as a sukkah, if there's movement in the wall, that's how Rashi seems to learn the Gemara. If the wall is swaying back, moving this forward and back, if there's movement in the wall, Rav Acha says it's not called a wall, it's not a good wall. You don't get credit that you have a wall. The sukkah needs a minimum of 3 walls. You don't have 3 walls on the deal. So to that, the Gemara is going to challenge from the following story, from the following case. Tashma. We have an interesting case. Elon Hamesach al Haaretz. Oh, sorry. Tashma. Hayisham Elon Ugeder. You have a tree or a fence. Now, what is this talking about? A well that you bring the water up from the well. The well was very common that the well was deep, into the ground. You have to go down a certain amount to bring draw the water from the well. And you would, being that and the area of the well, let's say, has a certain width. Let's say it's a 4 tefachim wide, and it's 10, and there's a certain height, has its own area, and that's, let's say, called a private area. The well, it's private. It's not a place that, and therefore, and then if you would take the water from down in the well and you would take it out from the well and bring it up to the street, you're going from the wells where a lot of them were in public property. The well was a private, but the well itself, being that it had a certain side, and has the walls around the well, so they had, it was considered its own private area. And the issue was that you're going from private property, drawing water from private property into public property. And that's the violation on Shabbat, to go from private property to public property. So the rabbis now, but if you go ahead and you would create a wall around, in the public property, you put up a structure, you could put up a building in public, meaning you created your own private domain. If you create a private domain with walls, which makes it separates it from the public property, that would be considered private property. So how do you do that? So what did the rabbis say? The rabbi said a lot of times let's say people are traveling this time of the year, they would be going to the Beit HaMikdash. It was a mitzvah of Ola Regel, that all the men had to go. You had to go to the Beit HaMikdash. You had to bring korbanot. And what happens if it's Shabbat, Yom Tov, and you're on the way, and you stop, and you need to draw water to feed your animals. And on Shabbat, let's say the issue would be Shabbat, where there's the issue of carrying. You can't carry from private property to public property. So the rabbis instituted, they made a leniency. They said, if you go ahead and you put up these partitions that are, let's say, an amma, let's say anywhere between 18 and 24 inches, if you put one partition this way and one partition perpendicular, and you do this on all 4 sides of the pit. So let's say you have the pit right in the center. Now, if you would put a wall here, a wall here, and a wall here, I mean, you created, you separated, you made that area private. But they don't even require you to do that. As long as you put let's say a 2-foot partition, 2 foot wide going this way, and then 2 foot wide going this way. And then there's a whole space. But then in the next corner, you did the same thing. You put this 2 foot wide partition this way, 2 foot wide partition this way, and did it on all 4 corners. The rabbis say that's good enough. We consider that because you have on all corners, you have created partitions on all corners, it's considered a private area. And rabbinically, the rabbis don't even make any concerns, any fence to say you can't carry in such an area, because it's not the typical private area on Shabbat. A private area usually has proper walls going. I got a proper wall going this way, got a proper wall going this way. But now I don't have proper walls here. I only got the corners. I got the corners with, let's say, these type of walls, 2 feet this way, 2 feet there, 2 feet. This whole open space in between. But let's say that's considered, because you have each corner is, Mr. Haber, is it clear? Each corner has these partitions. It's considered private. It's not considered public property. But that was an allowance they made that you could use under a certain situation, let's say, to help the people when they're traveling for the Yom Tov. So now the question is, that privatized that area in a certain sense. It's like considered an enclosed the area which is surrounding the well. And now you could on the Shabbat, you could go down, draw the water from the well, which, let's say, the water which was considered, you're going deep down into private area because the well was down. Good morning, Simon. And you're taking, and it's not considered you're going from private to public, but you go from private to private, because the area is as if you put a corner here, you petition here, here. The well is in the center, and the well itself has a law of private because of its height, the depth of the well and the width of the well. And now you can just take the water and bring it up right over here. And since you have that, those corners have those partitions, you have privatized the area. But you can't go past that. Exactly. This whole area will now be considered private. If you take the water outside that area, you're going into public property. Now the question, the Breita discusses what could be used as a partition to enclose this area surrounding the well. Obviously, you take a nice piece of wood, and you take the wood and you put it and it's 2 feet this way, and 2 feet going this way. That would work. The typical. What about other type of materials? What about if there's a tree over there? If let's say you have a tree in the corner here, tree in the corner here, so can you use one corner has a tree? Can you use a tree as one of those partitions for the corner? And let's say the tree had a certain thickness that the tree went 2 feet this way, and then also it has 2 feet going this way. The thickness of the trunk of the tree. So I'm this way and I'm this way. Can you use a tree as one of the partitions? That's the issue. Can you use a fence made out of stone, a stone fence, a pile of stones that had 2 feet going this way, 2 feet going that way? So that's what the Breita is talking about. So comes the Breita and he says, there's a Tashma. Come in here. We're on 24b3 on the left side. Hayisham, surrounding this well, or this well, you had an Elan. You had a tree, ogeder, or you had a fence, a stone made out of, you had the stones together, like a little stone fence. Or you had, what other material? You had mechitzas hakonim. You had a pile of reeds that, let's say you had reeds that were attached to the ground, and the reeds had a certain, covered a certain area. These reeds covered an area that were that 2 feet going this way of reeds and 2 feet of reeds going that way. So nidan mishum diyumid. These have the status of kosher partitions, these double partitions that we have going this way and going that way. It takes effect as that twin partition. I'm 2 feet this way and 2 feet going this way. So the Gemara's question is, now, if you have the reeds that are attached to the ground, now reeds are moving. There's movement in the reeds. So how could we say that the reeds could be used as a partition? That if you have 2 feet of reeds going this way, 2 feet of reeds going that way, but the wind is moving the reeds. And you told me there's something that if it's moving, if there's movement, it's not going to be a kosher partition. That's the Gemara's question. So the Gemara answers Hatam Nami. Also over there is the Avile B'Hutza V'Dafna. You strengthen the tree, or you strengthen the reeds you wrapped around it, you intertwine certain palm branches to it to hold it, to stabilize it, and therefore it's not going to move with the wind. It's not going to move with the wind in any way that's considered real movement, and therefore it's secured it, and therefore it's considered a proper partition for the corners. So the Gemara says, Tashma. I have another case. What's the next case? Ilan ha-meisach al-aretz. Let's say you have a tree, and the tree is humongous tree, and the branches from the tree, you have from all sides. The branches are they come over, they go all over, and the branches fold. They come all the way down to the ground, and there's an empty space underneath these branches in the middle. Let's say it forms like some sort of canopy. Imagine like here's the trunk of the tree, and then you have these branches going out from the tree, and they fold all the way down, and they come all the way within 9 to 12 inches of the ground. We know we have a rule: if you're within 3 tvachim of the ground, that's called you're attached to the ground. That means you're on the ground. You can technically, as long as you're within 9 inches, let's say, it's called you're attached. So if these branches come all the way And now, so what do we say? Ilan ha-mesach al haaretz. Im ein no full government aretz shlosha tvachim. If it's not higher than the ground 3 tvachim, if the branches come within 3 tvachim of the ground, mitalton tachtaf. Now this area is considered enclosed because it has all these branches that are on all sides are enclosing the area that's underneath, that's in between the branches. Let's say you have the branches over here, got branches over there, but this whole space is empty in between. So you could go ahead on Shabbat, you could go ahead and carry underneath that place, even though the tree, let's say, is in public property. But now that the branches have come, and the branches are 10 tfachim high, it has a height of 10 tfachim, so therefore it's like it forms a wall, it has the size of a wall, and it has a width of an opening, and so therefore it has, let's say, 4, you have a lot of space between this wall and that wall. We have and therefore you only need technically 4 tfachim. You only need a space of about 12 to 16 inches in between these walls, and you have much larger space. So therefore this now, it's an enclosed area. So the open area that's enclosed by this canopy of these branches that have now come around, maybe there's a nice, we'll see if there's a nice picture over here. That area is considered, now you could carry in that area on Shabbat, because now it has privatized that area that's underneath these branches. Let's see if they have a picture here in this Gemara. Here that they have, you see, here you have, look how this picture in Oz V'Hadar, here you have the tree, the trunk of the tree. The branches go all the back. The branches have a nice wall in the back, right? All that green is the branches of the tree. And now we have, that's considered, and now you could carry in this area, so let's say the same way it did it on this side, it did it on the other side. And therefore, and all around, so you got four sides full with this tree covering. So the Gemara says, why are you able to go ahead and carry over there? Aren't these branches of the tree? There's movement in this, they sway back and forth. Yes, you formed a nice thing around this area, but since it's moving back and forth, it should invalidate it from being a wall. So how could you say that's considered a wall? So the Gemara answers the same thing that we said before. Amai haka'azel v'asi asamnami. The Gemara says also the avelei behutza v'dafna. You went ahead and you tied it down. The same thing. You put you weaved it, they secured it with these palm branches to make sure that there won't be really movement. So the Gemara says, listen, if you secured it in such a way, Hachi, Alama Amar Rav Huna Rabbi Yeshua. Why did Rav Huna say in the name of Rabbi Yeshua, Ein mitaltalin ela beis hasayin? Why does he say that you only could carry the area? If this type of tree would close an area, it depends how large the area is for us to say that you could carry within that area. If the area is enough, which is the size of 100 amot by 50 amot, it's called, let's say, 2 sa. It's a certain size. If the area within this enclosure is 2 sa, that's considered, that's the amount that you could go ahead and carry. But if the area, if this tree, the branches are covering an area that's larger than 2 sa is the size of the courtyard of the Mishkan. That's the size that if they say it's around 5,000 square amot, 100 by 50, so it's a pretty large area. So but you only can carry within this area if it's enclosing up to 5,000 amot. 5,000, which is around could be close to 10,000, 7,500 to 10,000 feet. But if it's closing more than that total feet, if it's closing more than that, you wouldn't be able to carry that. So the Gemara's question now is, but why? If you went ahead and you put the palm branch, you tied it down, you're tying it down, you want to go ahead and use it, and you want to live underneath it. So if you're using it and you want to live underneath of it, so you're creating a wall for living purposes. So if you're creating a wall for living purposes, so it doesn't make a difference how large the area inside is, you should be able to carry in the area inside. If you have an area that's enclosed, not for the purpose of living, but it's enclosed, then we say you get up to 5,000, as long as the area is not larger than 5,000 square feet. But if the area was enclosed not for living purposes, you get up to 5,000 square feet to carry. If that's you could carry, as long as the area is not larger than 5,000, but if it's not larger than 5,000 square feet, you carry within. If the area is larger than 5,000 square feet, and it was not created, it was not fenced for the purpose of living, rabbinically, the rabbis say you can't carry in such a place. But the Gemara's question is, if you tied it down, you're doing it, you're going to live there. You're going to spend time underneath it. Right, it might be a temporary living. What? Right, so this person's going to be there. He's going to be there to watch the field. He's going to stay there. He's going to be there. It'll be a form of a protection for him that he's enclosed. He has these enclosure. So the Gemara's question is, why shouldn't he be able to carry, even if it's larger than that amount of space? We should say that since you enclosed it in this way, that you tied it down, you want to live there. If you want to live there, so therefore you should be able to get even more than that. You should be able to get money. You should be able to get. It should not be limited what the size of the area is, because it was encircled for the purpose of living. Right. So that's how Rashi explains. Since you were actively involved in enclosing it by putting these palms to tie it down, therefore it's made for living. So therefore it should also be permitted to carry, even we should not say limited by its size. If something is encircled for living purposes, it should be permitted to carry there. The Gemara answers, Mishum dehave dira shetashmishel ha'avir. When you're living there, you're not living there for the purpose that you're interested in living there to live there. Your only purpose is there. You're there. You're not interested in. You're only there to watch the fields. You create it. That's not called a living a place, because it's a place. The way the commentary says, it's not made for itself. When you go ahead and you enclose a place, you're closing because you want that. You want to be. You're there to use this area, spend time in this place, come into a house, you put walls up. This is, I want to be inside here. I encircle a space to be here, to secure this place, to be here. But over here, this type of fencing that's created by these trees, and he ties it down, he's not there because he wants to. It's not because you're there because you want to live this place, you want to be here. You only because you need to watch the field. This space is not, it's not securing this space, but you only need to watch the field, and you need a place that's not too hot. And therefore, by having this, you're inside this area that's enclosed by these trees, and anything that you're making a space that you have not interest of being in this space at all. The only reason why you created this, you encircled this space, is because you want to watch something outside the space. This whole area that's enclosed is not for the purpose of this space that I'm here for the purpose of being in this space, that I want this space. Rather, I'm only here because I want to watch the field that's outside this space. There, we say the rabbis did not consider that the normal type of living place. And if it's not the normal type of living place, then it's not considered we're not going to allow you to go ahead and carry in that area more than a certain amount. You only get up to two to carry. I just want to say, yesterday the question was brought up by the class. Someone brought up whether an etrog is mukseh on Shabbat or not. So I just want to tell, I made a comment to the person that most probably etrog is not mukseh. Rav Avadi Yosef writes etrog is not mukseh. An etrog you could technically move on Shabbat. There is an opinion that says an etrog is mukseh, but he brings down the etrog is not mukseh. You can move an etrog. However, the lulav and the hadassim and the ravot have no purpose on Shabbat. And since it has no purpose on Shabbat, you cannot move the lulav. You cannot move the lulav and the hadassim and the ravot. So you have to beware to make sure you put your lulav, your hadassim, and your ravot in a very good place.
What's the purpose of the etrog on Shabbat? What could it be?
Very good. The etrog on Shabbat is, what about if you want to smell the etrog on Shabbat? So technically, I think there is a discussion whether you have a right to, you say a bracha. In general, throughout the year, if you take an etrog, let's say I take an etrog before the holiday of Sukkot, like say today, it's not the holiday. If I want to smell that etrog, there's a bracha for smelling, for fruits that give off a nice smell. There's a bracha to say before, just like we say Baruch Atah Hashem, you say a bracha on samim, you say a bracha on hadassim throughout the year. You go ahead, you have a right, you go ahead and you have a mitzvah before you smell an etrog. If you smell an etrog, to say a bracha.
Does that mean you could carry it on Shabbat? Can you carry it on Shabbat also?
I mean, you have to, technically, if there's an eruv, if there's a place where there's an eruv.
No, with no eruv.
No eruv, you can't carry, again, where? If you're indoor, if you're outdoors, you can't carry, if no eruv, you can't carry anywhere. You can't carry anything if there's no eruv, outside, right? You can't carry anything outside. But the etrog,
if you're eating a banana, you can't carry it with you outside?
No. If there's no eruv, I live in the Lower East Side. We don't, in the Lower East Side, Moshe Feinstein, we're in Moshe Feinstein's neighborhood. He says you're not able to carry it over there, and there we don't. No one takes anything out. Anyone who follows Moshe Feinstein's opinion will not take a banana outside, no gum outside, no nothing. They won't take anything outside from private property, from their house to the street. They won't take anything. The issue is, regarding the etrog, is am I allowed to, the question is, do I say a bracha on the etrog, on the smell of an etrog during the holiday of Sukkot? Do we say that since it's used for the mitzvah, do we say there's a bracha to say on the smell during the holiday, or do we say during the holiday it's used, we will not say a bracha for the smell? There's a discussion in the halacha, what's it based on? But there is meaning, the issue is, do you say a bracha on the smell of etrog during the holiday, or do you only say a bracha on the etrog when it's not holiday time? But if I have a different fruit, a different nice smelling thing that I said a bracha on the smell, then once I said a bracha on that one, I could definitely smell the etrog. If I have in mind, I take a nice fruit, a certain fruit that has a nice smell, and I said a bracha on that fruit for the smell, I said a bracha on that fruit, and I had in mind the etrog, then I could smell the etrog. So being that I have the ability under certain circumstances to smell the etrog on Shabbat, so it has a purpose. But the hadassim I'm not allowed to smell on Shabbat. The hadassim that are used for the lulav and etrog cannot be smelled on Shabbat. They have no purpose. So therefore, the hadassim and the lulav and the aravot cannot be moved on Shabbat. So therefore, make sure you put the lulav. Don't leave the lulav on the table. Don't leave it. Make sure you put it in a nice spot. But however, The etrog don't have to be so concerned about it. If you didn't put it away in a nice spot before the holiday, there's no, you can rely on the opinions. You can just move it on the holiday in its normal fashion. But of course, like we said, you can't carry it outside, and you can't prepare the etrog for after. You don't prepare on Shabbat for after Shabbat, but that's regarding the etrog. Is that clear, everybody? Again, is that clear, Mr. Batesh? Yes. There are certain, a lot of places in Manhattan, there are a roof, but morning, Mr. Feldman. But even though there's a roof, Rav Moshe Feinstein himself would not hold of a roof in Manhattan. That's his opinion. So there is many parts of Manhattan, there isn't a roof, but he himself, Rav Moshe Feinstein, was asked his opinion. He said, now there are other opinions that disagree. Rav Moshe Feinstein is not the only rabbi; he's one of the greatest rabbis. But everyone needs to know what they should do, whether they should carry good morning in Manhattan or not. You have to find out what's allowed according to your Torah, according to your tradition, according to your rabbis. You should find out what you do. And Rabbi Moshe Feinstein was my rabbi. I mean, my rabbi was Rabbi David Feinstein, and Moshe Feinstein's son. So I follow Rabbi Feinstein's opinion. I want to share with everyone an amazing Yalkut Yosef for a few minutes before the end regarding the conduct that a person should conduct themselves throughout the holiday of Sukkot when you're in the Sukkah. He says that you have to realize we have special guests that come to the Sukkah. You have the Ushpizin, the very holy, just like you have by a Brit, by a circumcision, we have Eliyahu Navi comes to a Brit. So too, we have some sort of form of the holy Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, and David. Those are the special guests that come to our Sukkah. And because they come to our Sukkah, when you have such special guests, if you have such a person come to your Sukkah, how would you, if Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov are sitting at your Sukkah, how would you act? You're sitting in front of Avadi Yosef is in your Sukkah. The Ben Ish Chai is in your Sukkah. How would you, Chacham Baruch is in your Sukkah. How would you act in front of Chacham Baruch? How would you act in front of Chacham, right, Jaime? How would you act in front of such a person? How would people conduct themselves?
We would sing.
You would sing, and everybody would be careful what they would say in front of Rabbi Raful is in your Sukkah, right, Mr. Haber? How would you act? Your rabbis are in your Sukkah, you would you conduct yourselves in a certain fashion. You wouldn't scream. You wouldn't make a deal about things. You wouldn't get angry. You would act in a certain way. You would even sit in the Sukkah. You would sit with a certain fashion. It's a certain kavod that you would have. And that's what he says that you should in the Sukkah. Keep that in mind throughout the holiday. When you're in the Sukkah, you're in a very holy place. And it's very holy in the Shamot, however you want to call it, souls that are coming to visit our Sukkah. And therefore, we have to conduct ourselves. And he even says, it's appropriate to designate a chair, a special, beautiful chair in your Sukkah for these Ushpizin. The same way at a Brit, at a circumcision, we go ahead and we separate, we have a chair. This Kisei Shel Eliyahu. This is the Kisei Shel Ushpizin. How do you like that, Mr. Feldman? This is the chair of the Ushpizin. I don't know, maybe we could create a business over here, everybody, selling these Ushpizin chairs. I don't know, nice Ushpizin chairs. I wonder if they're doing it in Israel. The other thing we have to remember, there's a special mitzvah of Simcha on Yom Tov. Every day of Yom Tov, 9 days in a row, outside of Israel, we have 9 days of holiday. Special mitzvah of happiness. The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, his job is to get us, is to make us not happy. Is to get us upset about things. That's his job. He doesn't want Mr. Feldman for us to fulfill our mitzvah of Simcha. So we have to be aware of the enemy. He's trying to get us to be upset at things, to make deals over things. Let us remember, fulfill our mitzvah of Simcha every day, including Chol HaMoed. Make sure you have some great food on Chol HaMoed, some great drinks on Chol HaMoed, as well as a holiday. And also your clothing, the way you dress. I don't know if I mentioned it yesterday. The dress, next week's dress, Monday through Friday, supposed to be different than your dress that you dress today. Everyone dresses nice. but you have to dress at least one level up. You're supposed to dress, honor the Chol HaMoed. It's not a weekday. The Sfardim do not wear tefillin on Chol HaMoed. Correct, everybody? You don't wear tefillin on Chol HaMoed. Ashkenazim, there's a mix of opinions. But even Ashkenazim, there's some that do wear tefillin, they got to also dress better. Honor the Chol HaMoed. And remember, every day, days of Simcha. Now, next week, I'm going to be away. So if I'm going to be coming in any day, I will notify the group, okay? But at the moment, I'm not going to be in next week. I apologize. I want to wish everyone a beautiful Chag Sameach. And you know, I'm not going to tell you Chag Kosher because everyone's going to be kosher. But to tell you Chag Sameach, that is the challenge. I want to wish everyone a beautiful Chag Sameach and a good Yom Tov and a beautiful Shabbat to everybody.
Chag Sameach, Rabbi.
Chag Sameach, you too, everybody. All the best. I'm going to be in Staten Island and New Jersey.